You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks and a very special episode brought to you from Farthest From 22 Live, which took place back in May. On our previous episode from the show, we spoke to Anthony Daniels, and today we catch up with Brian Herring as he talks about his time in Star Wars fandom, his love of Star Wars from childhood all the way through to working on the films. So here's our conversation with Brian Herring from Farthest From 22 Live. We're here at Farthest From 22 Live. I am in a virtual room with Brian Herring. Hello, Brian.
Hello. That sounds dodgy, doesn't it?
Doesn't it?
Virtual room.
How's things with you? How's the lockdown treating you?
It's all right. I mean, I'm doing a bit from home, which is okay. Obviously, all the film production, everything's shut down. So we're just waiting for it all to come out at the other end. I mean, I haven't been freelance for some years. This is sort of not a great deal of difference to me. Other than I can't go to the cinema very much, you know.
Well, that's true. The Oscars are going to be interesting next year, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, they're talking about letting films that haven't had a cinema release, that have gone straight onto Netflix or whatever, to be allowed to be considered. But we'll see.
Funny old world. So obviously, Farthest From normally is a vintage collecting show that runs 3 times a year down in Fordingbridge, the best kept secret in British Star Wars fandom. Obviously, we're not there today. We should be, but we're not. We're doing it this way. So obviously, the opportunity to talk to you about not only about what you do, but also what you do as a hobby, about the stuff that you collect and the stuff that you're into. So I'll kick off. Actually, I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm going to kick off with a listener's question or a reader's question.
Okay, right.
Paul Nichols, who's a lovely fella that we see at Star Wars Fan Fun Day quite regularly. And he says, what was the first figure you got and which one is your favourite? So I guess he means the old Palace-Toy figures from back in the day.
Yeah, I got two at once, and they were, because at the time, the 99p was quite expensive.
True.
And I remember thinking, I better get ones that look like we spent the money, if you will. So I got Chewbacca and Darth Vader because they were the biggest.
That's a good choice.
But of course they could fight as well, and they used to have little adventures. So, I mean, Chewbacca was my favourite character growing up, definitely. And so to have that was quite cool. So yeah, Chewie and Darth Vader were my first two. And I didn't get any of the figures, any of the vehicles or anything for a while.
Yeah.
But I used to do this thing where if we ever got an appliance, or someone in the neighbourhood got an appliance, and that polystyrene, the packing polystyrene, was great because it had all the little bits on it. It looked like cloth bases or landing platforms. So I used to kind of get all this polystyrene and just pile it all up, have different bases and stuff. But that was kind of my introduction to it was definitely, there was Darth Vader and Chewie.
There's a lot to be said about the Blue Peter method of building Star Wars sets.
Absolutely, yeah. Because it could be anything. I mean, with those, we used to get the X-Wing. It was definitely the X-Wing. Or if you got the Death Star, it was definitely the Death Star. Whereas you could make your own stuff up, and I used to do a lot of that.
So when you went from, you got those first couple of figures, did you, my first was Death Star droid, but I couldn't tell you what my second one was. So you did you build it in waves or do you get a few Empire and going back?
I think a lot of the times we got what was there. So it's like you just turned up and you'd have to have an Ugnaught, but it's, I was a while ago clearing out my loft because I was the kid that didn't ever throw the boxes away.
Right.
And so in my mum's loft, mum and dad's loft, the boxes were there in my childhood home. And my mum's like, can we throw these away? I'm like, no, don't throw them away, Mum. I still have all my stuff and the boxes.
Nice.
So they're all bubble wrapped, and I mean they've been played with. I mean they were loved and battered, but it's boxes are in pretty good nick. But I just remember I have an old wooden ammunition box that my brother used to use for fishing tackle. Right. He built my brother's a carpenter, and as a young man, he built like a tray for all his fishing tackle gear in, and then I inherited the box when he got too much fishing tackle gear, and I kept all my Star Wars figures in it. Yeah. And in the lid, in the top, in the tray, I kept all the guns, the backpacks, the capes. So I have them all. I've got the lot. And I just used to lock this box up, and I found it in my loft when I was clearing the thing out, and I haven't seen it for years and years and years. So I've got all those out, you know. And because they've been stored in the dark, my Max Rebo is all one color.
That's nice.
So, you know, he looks like he looked, you know, when he first came out. Because I see they go white, don't they, on the arms and legs and stuff. Yeah. So I had, I don't know, I suppose over the years I bought like 20 stormtroopers and 5 or 6 snow troopers, and I had little armies, which were great. So yeah, I remember getting the Death Star for Christmas one year, and my dad was like, "Oh, a bit of cardboard, whatever." My grandfather bought it for me, and it was the best thing ever, best toy I ever had.
Totally.
Play with it. Thought it was fantastic. Yeah,
mine's over there somewhere. You can't quite see it. It's just behind all the fantasy flight stuff. But yeah, I've still got mine over there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
What's your preference then? I mean, when you go to a show like Farthest From, you're seeing all manner of grades of stuff, from like pristine, top end carded stuff to loose stuff in a box. What's your preference?
Well, see, the thing is, I don't really pick stuff up anymore. I've just got the stuff I had. Yeah, you know, I like it, a lot of it. I mean, I look at a lot of the new stuff. It's fantastic to see those old Palatoy figures.
Yeah.
You know, if you see them with a Palatoy, you know, still with a Palatoy branding on them, it's just brilliant, because it just takes you right back. I know there's a group on Facebook with a lot of vintage stuff, and you see those toy shelves that were just, you know, heaving with products, you know, just loads and loads of stuff. And I remember going in, you know, wandering into like Woolworths or wherever at Christmas and just losing my mind.
Yeah.
But I was in America in 1985. I was 15. It was my first trip to there, and it was the time the Power of the Force stuff was coming out, or actually it been and gone. So Toys R Us was selling everything off really cheaply.
Yeah.
Look back on it now, they were giving it away. Yeah. And I just thought, well, what can I get? And I had some money, but I was there for quite a long time, and I didn't want to kind of blow it all. But they were selling those shuttles off for $25, which but then was expensive. But when you think about it now, is nothing.
Yeah.
And there were 3 things I wished I'd got that I never did, which was the shuttle, the skiff,
yes,
and the A-wing.
Yes.
But what I bought instead was a couple of sets of micro collections. Was it the micro collections?
Yeah.
With the little die-cast figures, and I bought the whole of the Cloud City one, and I bought the Hoth base. And again, still got those in the box. They're all still boxed up. But yeah, I wanted that A-wing to such an extent that I bought it when they reproed it. That was, you know, it's not the same, but it was. I thought, I really like that shit.
A lot of collectors have stories like that. When you look back, I used to work in the sort of late 80s. I worked in a toy shop when I was about 16, and the boss had a box upstairs, like a big, you know, the big packing boxes they used to come in, and it was full of figures. And he went, "Mark, I just want the space. You can have them for like 25p a figure." And they were
wow.
And I was like, "I've got them all. I don't need them." You didn't think like that, did you? Keeping card figures wasn't a thing. No. So I didn't take the box. I could have bought the whole box for like 20 quid, and it would have paid my mortgage by now, I think.
Wow, yeah, of course. I mean, that's the thing for me, and I'm sure, because I'm not an avid toy collector, but I'm sure I'm going to get shot down for this now. It's because everybody buys with the new stuff, or even from the when they reissued them. I can't remember what that was. It Power of the Force, the first lot that came out. Yeah. You know, Luke Skywalker was all ripped. Everybody bought 3, didn't they? They took one out of the packet, put one in the box, and put one on the shelf. And does that not devalue everything? If everyone's got 5, they're not collectible anymore. Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I do, because I do a lot of conventions, and when I had a young woman in America come to me and say, I inherited all my father's 70s Star Wars collectibles.
Yeah.
And I said, do you know what we used to call collectibles in the 70s? She said, what's that? I said, toys.
Yes.
You know, and the reason they're collectible is because people used to play Sarlacc pit, dig a hole in the garden, throw Luke in and lose him, which is why there aren't that many good-looking ones around, you know. So it's...
My original Han Hoth lost his head on our rockery in the garden. So, yeah.
It's probably still there somewhere. So
somewhere.
Deep in. I do think that, you know, when the world ends and the aliens come down in several thousand years' time, and they start digging like Planet of the Apes style through the rubble, they'll come across a layer of Funko Pops that they just think, well, but they won't be able to make a head and a tail of what they are. They'll probably think
just ahead of all those copies of ET on the Atari cartridge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, above the Cabbage Patch Kids and the Beanie Babies. You know, it's, they'll probably think that the Funko Pops are like fertility idols or something. You know.
Yeah, just a species that never took off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So once you moved on from getting Palitoy figures and that sort of stuff, what caught your interest after that? Because I know for me, it was literature was the thing. It was comics.
Yeah, I did a lot of the books. Again, when I was going through, I put a lot of this on Twitter. It was hashtag Hez's Loft. There's probably some of it still knocking around. But I found all of those, not just Star Wars, but the novelizations of the movies.
Yeah.
You know, they always used to come out, and they always used to come out before the film as well, so you could get the book done. And then, and I found all kinds of really crazy ones, like the Book of Explorers and the Book of Rambo, and what else did I have? Some really good ones. I found the Close Encounters photo novel.
Yes, I've got that
well.
back there, yeah.
And I found the Marvel Comics paperback adaptations of the movies.
Yeah.
And I had Empire Strikes Back and I had Return of the Jedi. And I have a feeling that I bought the Star Wars one from All the Good Stuff at a convention. Yeah, at a convention in Birmingham a couple of years ago. And I can't remember. Nice. I think it was from All the Good Stuff because I remember finding a card. But so I did a lot of that sort of stuff. And then I got into things like the art portfolios, and I had a lot of those. I still have all of those.
Yeah.
And again, I was going through the books, and I found the How to Draw the Star Wars Way, and it was just like some of those step by steps, How to Draw Jabba the Hutt and the Rancor. Yeah. Just really, really nice books. And something I did unearth that was given to me by a puppeteer called Phil Eason, who played Yaddle in the Phantom Menace. He gave me the 1970, I want to say to 78, pop out and make book.
Yeah,
you remember that? You could punch the stuff out, and it's complete.
Wow.
It's in wonderful condition. It's on my bookshelf, and it's I just kept that, and he gave it to me for my birthday one year.
Isn't there something beautiful, nostalgic though? Not just because they were there as a kid, and you might not be able to afford it, but over the time you get there, but it's just so, especially the original film, it's so evocative of the era. Isn't it?
There was something else. I found up again in the loft again, but I found a Bisto tin, a big one of those big catering Bisto tins, and this was like a time capsule because first of all, it had all of my blue, very dog-eared Topps cards in.
Nice.
And then there was also a complete Micronauts Baron Karza, if you remember any of those stuff. I really want Marvel to do a movie of that. And the other thing I found in it was a complete set of Letraset erasers.
Oh, sweet.
And never touched, never used.
Wow.
Just sitting in that tin with a couple of black hole figures and soaps, R2-D2 and C-3PO shaped soaps in the boxes.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a crazy find. I was just going through so much stuff because I had 30 odd years of my life in my loft, so I had to kind of clear it out, having an extension. So it was just like purge a load of stuff, but also I couldn't get rid of it. You know, just so much stuff is just lovely. And I found my Star Wars fan club membership kit.
Sweet.
So what was quite fun is to look at my Star Wars fan club membership from like 1981, maybe.
Yeah.
And now, of course, I look back on that now with what I've since gone on to do.
Yeah.
And it's just a very, very crazy little sort of jump in time. It's a lot of fun.
I'm Anthony Daniels, and you are listening to Fantha Tracks. Well done.
Just on that subject of the old Star Wars fan club, because I've got a whole sort of area back there for all my old fan club stuff, Bantha Tracks and all that. When that magazine used to come out, when Bantha Tracks came out and the letters came through, it made you feel very much like you were part, like they were giving you a peek behind the curtain. Is that how you felt about it?
Yeah. And I also went to that to their Return of the Jedi premiere.
You did that?
The triple bill thing. I went to that. My dad took me to that. From my dad's sat for all three of them. Me and my friend Kenneth. And it was amazing. Just because you did feel like you were in on a secret.
Yeah.
There was a certain charm. I sort of look back on that now. There was much more of a charm about that, I think, than necessarily the way the internet operates now.
Yeah.
And it was lovely. It was a really nice thing. And of course, I've got a load of those. And a friend of mine who was in that fan club longer than me recently gave me all his stuff.
Oh, lovely.
Like, so he's got much older ones as well. And they're all just trying not to fall to pieces. You pick them up.
With the paper goes
and they're all kind of going away on the creases and everything. But I'd kept all the stills and the stickers, the Revenge of the Jedi patch, you know. No, I had a Return of the Jedi patch. Sorry, I had the black Revenge of the Jedi one.
Yep.
But the same guy who gave me his Bantha Tracks also gave me his Revenge of the Jedi Yoda
nice
one, which was amazing. Yeah. I turned 50 in March, and another gift somebody else gave me was 4 of the T-shirt transfers.
Yes.
Remember, there was the one with Darth Vader, there was one with R2 and 3PO, Han Solo and Chewbacca, and Luke and 3PO with the kind of the big round Star Wars box around them. And they've not been used. They did so they're still in both sets of paper. And he said, "Oh, I thought you might want these, or you might be able to find a thing for that." And I opened them up. And because they've just been sitting in an envelope since 1977.
Christine.
And again, it's amazing. They're amazing. I love that sort of stuff. My friend Zachary, I work with at conventions. He has. I see you've got an Attack of the Clones standee behind you there, but he collects point of sale and advertising material for them, and he's got that massive Jar Jar Binks in his front room. It's ridiculous. Yeah, he's got that one. He's got the Yoda, and he's got the Naboo Starfighter. I think he got out of Toys R Us. Absolutely crazy.
So when it struck me, we spoke recently for Star Wars Insider. I think it should be coming out fairly soon. The first part, you, me, and Dave Chapman. Yeah. That old Bantha Tracks magazine focused on Star Wars, but then of course Indiana Jones started coming into the magazine. Lucasfilm focused, and then Labyrinth and all the Henson related stuff. And it struck me after we spoke, and I wish I'd said it in the moment when we spoke before, but I often wonder, or thought since, reading those Bantha Tracks magazines, seeing all the ancillary Lucasfilm stuff that they were doing that did fold in with what Henson was doing at the time. I just wonder whether that kind of got into your head, because that came into your life all those years later.
Yeah, I mean, not so. I'm definitely with Dave. Dave has a much more linear trip into puppets than I did, because I blagged it. I blagged my way into an audition at Spitting Image in the 90s and never thought about working with puppets. I was a fan of the Muppets as a kid growing up, and so when Luke Skywalker showed up on the Muppets, I was like, I followed all that stuff, but it was not something I ever thought I would go and do. And as I say, I blagged my way into this audition, having never picked up a puppet. And then 6 weeks later, I was on television. I mean, I wasn't a principal. They took me on and trained me. So, that stuff did have an effect on me, and I went back and appreciate it a lot more now than I probably did then. I do remember the Lucas connection with Labyrinth. And, a lot of the stuff they were doing with Return to Oz and that kind of thing. And you start to recognise the same people like Gary Kurtz and people like that coming in. And you think, oh, okay, that's the guy who worked on Star Wars. And I remember knowing a lot more names from behind the scenes than you would think one would know at that kind of age. But of course now it's fun because you get to meet these people.
Well, exactly. Well, that's a good point, actually, because Star Wars was unique. I think Star Wars was pretty unique, apart from Harryhausen and stuff, because people were aware of him and his work, and Willis O'Brien doing King Kong and all that sort of thread of films. But when Star Wars came out, all of a sudden a film would come out and people would know who the director was, and then know who the producer was, and then the music was.
Writer,
exactly.
Completely.
But then it filters down to the point of with Star Wars, it's like people know who the special effects guys are, and so on. And now you're part of that, but you've come from that lineage in a way.
It's very strange. I mean, I remember the first time that I twigged I was working with Tim Rose,
right,
and what that meant. Because I met Tim, I was working at Spitting Image with Tim, and then he mentioned that he'd worked on Return of the Jedi. And I was about 22. I said, "Oh, what did you do?" He said, "Oh, I was Admiral Akbar," and I lost my mind. And he was quite, and it was an amazing thing. And then I went back. I must have had it on VHS, or I might have got it on VHS at the time. Went out and got it on VHS. Was that documentary about they did for Return of the Jedi, the Creature Shop thing? Yeah. And there was Tim, and I'm like, oh, I know him. Oh, that's crazy. And then later on, the sort of when we did Force Awakens, I met Mike, and I'd already kind of met Dave Bartley a few times, and so those guys that worked on that stuff, and now I was working with them, and eventually it was sort of very weird because we were kind of ringing them up, going, "Do you want to come and work on this job with us?" So that was quite fun. But to see those, I mean, I got to meet Robert Watts, came to visit set of Force Awakens.
He's a character, isn't he?
Yeah, he's great. And I had a poster in, because you kind of submitted them. I had a poster in for Harrison to sign my Raiders poster. Yeah. I'd already got Lawrence Kasdan to sign it because I was a massive Raiders fan. And it's funny because when you meet people, when you meet these guys, you try not to fanboy at them. Yeah. Even though you really want to. But I started speaking to Lawrence about Silverado rather than Raiders, or rather than The Empire Strikes Back. I led with Silverado because I love it, and I think it's a great movie. And he signed and wrote me a nice thing on my poster, and I knew, and it was in the place. It was with Harrison's PA, and I went and got it back because Robert Watts was in the building, and I sidled up to him and said, "Would you mind signing this?" And me and Dave both, because Dave's poster that he was having signed was the one from his bedroom wall.
Wow.
This dog-eared Raiders poster that he had.
Yeah.
And mine was one of those 10th anniversary ones that Drew Struzan did, the beautiful thing. And he rolled it out, and he looked at it, and Robert Watts went, "Now that was a movie." And he was just a lovely, lovely man, because he went around the Millennium Falcon set, and he just said it's just like it was.
Yeah.
Everyone got.
That's nice to know, though, isn't it?
Yeah. It was smashing. Really, it's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant.
One of Dave's earliest events, he used to run the Fordingbridge Film and TV Festival before he did Farthest From.
Right.
And I'd interviewed Robert for my old website, so we'd got a bit of a dialogue and put Dave and Robert together, and Robert came down and they did a screening of Raiders that Robert introduced, and he brought the Fertility Idol with him.
Oh, fantastic.
Which was just
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's Raiders is my favourite movie.
Yeah, same, outside of
hands down. Yeah, it's I love it a lot. So it has been really amazing. I got sat down. Neil Scanlon, my boss on the Star Wars films, he sat me down. He said, "We've got a meeting today we're talking about BB-8, the voice for BB-8.
Yeah,
and can you sit in on this?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So these two guys came in, and one of them I've since realised was Matthew Wood, and the other one was Ben Burt, and Ben Burt walked in, and he doesn't, contrary to popular belief, spend his time walking around banging things with just to see what they sound like
with a pitching fork.
Yeah, just the most, just a lovely, generous, lovely, clever man who's just, his legacy is just so big, of the stuff that he's put together. But it was pretty cool to be sat there with him, and I just wish that I'd had my Sounds of Star Wars book to hand. Would you write your name in this, please? But it was smashing to meet him.
So when you moved through your, and I say fandom in inverted commas, you know what I'm saying? As a kid, you're a fan. You don't think of it as a fandom, and there wasn't a fandom per se. I've said this before. I think when we were kids, the internet didn't exist. Well, it did somewhere, but not for us.
Well, not for us.
The internet was the playground, wasn't it? It was your mates in the playground.
Yeah, completely. I mean, also, it stopped being cool to be into Star Wars. I was there a lot longer than a lot of my friends was. So, or a lot of my friends were, sorry. And I do remember people, since the movie has come out, people kind of contacted me via social media going, "Yeah, we used to really give you a hard time about the Star Wars thing." You had the last laugh on that.
Just a bit.
Yeah. We would... I suppose Return of the Jedi came out when I was it 82? Was it
83? Yeah,
83. So I was about 13. So it was kind of already, you're at that point where I really liked it, but I can't really talk about it because my friends are all playing football and they're into golf. So it sort of became quite unfashionable. And then I luckily joined a local theatre group, a lot of the youth theatre, and you were kind of you had a little bit more leeway to be yourself. And I found some like-minded fans, so we did theatre, and we rattle on about The Empire Strikes Back with each other, and of course we sort of get it on VHS or whatever and sit down and watch it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, so when Star Wars came out on video, I've just done a piece of Fantha, Star Wars came out on video in 82. And the films took that much longer to come to video. So it was like memory. So much of it was locked in your memory of what you would discuss, and you'd kind of make your own thing in a way.
Or things you thought were in that film that weren't actually in it. Yeah. So because you'd read the comics, and the comics were written off of the back of the script. So Jabba the Hutt was in the original Star Wars one. Was in stuff in The Empire Strikes Back. Lines had changed. I think we discussed this, didn't we? I mean, Anthony Daniels changed the number and the odds, didn't he?
That's
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And it wasn't what I remember it being, which was, I can't remember what the
3,725 to 1 is what I remember, but it's 20 now, isn't it?
He dropped the 5, didn't he? Yeah. So there's things like that. But also with those comics with the Marvel stuff, which I've got all collected. I dip into those now and then, and there was a run of them. I think it was Archie Good. Who did the run? Do you know? You guys will probably all know them. There was a run in those, a pariah thing with Shara,
Walt Simpson.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
For me, that was the best arc they ran, and then when they brought the woman back, and it was fantastic, really good. That was probably one of my anchors for Star Wars through that time with the comics.
Yeah.
And I have most of them as individuals, but I can't keep them out, so I just did that instead, and so they're sort of up there.
There's something you make a really great point. It's something beautifully evocative about getting that weekly comic on a Wednesday and putting 10p down or whatever it was as the price went up, and then becoming a monthly, and you'd read that comic again and again and again.
Yep.
The read along, the old little read along books.
Oh yeah, I found all those as well. Yeah. And the I got when I was in America, I got the Return of the Jedi LP, the picture disc.
Yeah.
With Luke on one side and Wicket on the other side.
On the other, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was a good one. I never had a Star Wars one, but I did have an Empire Strikes Back one that did go with the gatefold thing.
Yeah.
So they were fun. It was all those little bits and pieces. I remember having a conversation with Anthony Daniels regarding his red arm, which is legendary. He just loathed it. And I was saying I thought it was brilliant. And he's like, why? I said, because as a kid, I would play with my figures, how that character would have got that red arm.
Exactly.
And that would have been the stuff that would fire my imagination. And that's what I've quite liked about having those figures, is I would make up the stories. And so when you had the stuff like the mini rigs, which weren't from the movies, they could be whatever you wanted them to be.
Yeah.
So they were quite cool in that respect. I liked stuff that wasn't necessarily defined by the story that you knew. And I think that's the fun of play, isn't it? I mean, that's really sort of, that definitely sparked my imagination, and so you know what I'm talking about.
It feels though, when you look back at those old toys, the original toys, you were holding a 3 3/4 inch lump of plastic with a weapon or a bit of a bit of plastic for a cape or whatever. But that was it. And kids now get toys that you push a button, it does this, push that button, it says 25 phrases.
Yeah.
It almost feels like analog versus digital. I think we were luckier in a way, weren't we?
Yeah, we were, because I think with a lot of this stuff, it's all defined by what it does. Whereas our toys weren't limited by what they didn't do, if that makes sense, because they could do anything, you know, and that for me is far more fun. But then I'm not 7 now. I mean, I'm sure, you know, the 7-year-olds are playing with stuff as they always did. I always sort of find it quite interesting when I come across any of the toy collecting forums and you see people going, oh, that's a terrible toy. But I always think you give that to a 5-year-old and he'll tell you if it's a terrible toy or not.
That's the watermark, isn't it?
Yeah, completely.
You make a good point, though, what you just said about toys are limited by what they can't do. In a positive way, a toy can talk, a toy can walk on its own. That's one thing. You make the toy walk.
Yeah, that was it.
Directing it.
Exactly.
You're puppeteering it, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So it's I think when toys do too much, they limit the imagination of the child that's playing with them.
Yeah.
Those dioramas I used to get, the Land of the Jawas or the Droid Factory or the other, you know, whatever. I was always kind of annoyed that the American ones always looked better than ours, but except for that Death Star. I thought it was kind of sad that there's not a lot of those coming out from the Hasbro company now.
Yeah,
I did a couple for Solo.
That's right.
Which I thought were quite
fun. Set and, yeah.
But then equally, when I looked at some of the stuff they brought out for the prequels, that giant ship that carried all of the battle droids and stuff like that, so they're pretty cool. Yeah. And I've not actually ever clapped eyes on one, but there was a Millennium Falcon, which was just so good.
Oh, the BMF, yeah.
The BMF? Is that what BMF. Is that what I think it stands for?
It could be if you want it to be.
Okay.
Big Millennium Falcon, but you know, Samuel L. Jackson may think.
Yeah, sure. So I've never actually seen one of those, but I've seen some pictures of it, and I did at one point strongly consider picking that new Lego Millennium Falcon up, but I haven't. I don't know where I'd put it.
It's funny.
I'd have to hide it from the missus.
You'd literally put the sofa on it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think if I had room, I'd build it into a coffee table, but because it is a thing of beauty. It's totally. An amazing piece of kit.
I know a few people who've built it, and it took 3 or 4 days. Yeah,
of course. I mean, the other thing that came out was it last year, the year before, was that sail barge.
Yes,
just gorgeous. I mean, as a kid, I would have lost my mind. Yeah. But I looked it up and down. And I thought that's really nice. I've got nowhere to put it, and I don't know what I'd do with it. So it's I'm now pretty much the books. I get all the art books and that kind of stuff, and I'm lucky we get given some nice bits of kit every now and then. Yeah. And the other thing I am collecting now. Because I have quite a good relationship with the 501st, the Rebel Legion, and those guys, and I patch trade.
Yes.
So now I've just got a ridiculous. I've got them down here. I mean, I've got 2 of these.
Lovely.
So it's I've just got dozens and dozens and dozens of patches. And
some people don't get patches. Do you get the attraction? I do.
I love them. I love them. I think they're great because they're all individuals. As they say in Life of Brian.
Yeah.
So each garrison has their own artwork, and it's just great because it's just I just think they're really, really clever, and they have ones that kind of all fit together and make up pictures, and
yes,
I don't know. I just think it's nice. They're very, very personal.
Yes,
you know, and I like that. It's this sort of Star Wars fan sort of exercising a bit of creativity and an artistic license on stuff. Yeah. And the other thing is challenge coins as well, which is just fantastic. And that's just got silly because I thought they give me those as well. And I've got those in a book, like an open up book. And again, they're all individual stuff and they're lovely bits of kit. And I did some for our crew on the last movie.
Oh, lovely.
If they've done all three, I've got one here and I'll show you this. So that's 7, 8 and 9 Pinewood Studios. And then on the back, I just had a little creature effects department, like the Lucasfilm logo.
Yeah.
And they're just nice. I just think they're nice things, you know. And what I like about it is it kind of unites with people that are into that stuff. It unites that part of the fandom.
Absolutely.
You go along to like a patch trading thing at Celebration, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just like this weird gambling den, and people are just bartering and doing that sort of stuff.
I'm Derek Arnold, and I get my news from Fantha Tracks.
So, you enjoy that aspect of the fandom then, because obviously there's general fans. 99% of people who see any of the Star Wars films are a general movie-going fan, but then there's some of us who go really into it. Do you enjoy those nooks and crannies of the fandom?
I do. I mean, I do. It's they're huge amounts of fun. I mean, obviously everything can kind of get a little obsessive and go a little bit odd every now and then, but for the most part, it's just people. You meet so many different people it's like amateur theatre. You meet so many different people from so many different walks of life that all love this one thing, and it massively levels it, you know. And I'm lucky in the fact that because I've been involved in these, but I can still walk about and very, very few people recognise me. Yeah. So it's like John Boyega doesn't stand a chance. You know, he can't go out, but I can wander around Celebration. Like last year, I wandered around Celebration for the most part unrecognised. Yeah. And it was great, you know, just going into having photographs with the cosplayers and that kind of thing. And occasionally people would go, "You such a thing," yeah. And it's nice to go along to those things. Yeah. And what's quite fun is I used to go to them anyway. So I went to the first Celebration in London. Yes. With a ticket. Yeah. The next Celebration in London was a completely different ball game. And so it was just a lot of fun. So it's not. I like Star Wars, so I can go along and meet the people and talk about it. And you know, we've talked about it, extensively over the years. And it's just nice that you can meet people from everywhere, and they're all into their own particular part of this stuff they don't like. And sometimes, you know, I've never had any really bad experiences, you know, but it can get a bit hairy on the internet every now and then. But ultimately, people are just passionate, and that's a good thing. Yeah, as long as it's well channeled. That's a great way of saying it. We say this when we're doing stuff on Fantha Tracks. You know, nobody has to agree. No, everyone can have completely different opinions, but there's a way of expressing your. You know, I think people say things on the internet they wouldn't say in company. Definitely. So you know, it's as I say, I've had some really good discussions. Yeah. With some people about stuff where they've been quite sure they don't like something. Yeah. And then when you start picking the bits out of it, they go, "Oh, actually, no, that's all right. Or this is all right." They still say, "Oh, I still didn't enjoy it." And you go, "Okay, fine." And that's absolutely fine. You know, but it's a generational thing as well, because I meet people my age and older that were just love the original trilogy. And I meet people 20 years younger who are just blown away by the prequels. Yeah. And then I meet kids now, you know, kids that were my age when the first one came out, that are obsessed with Ren, you know, with Kylo Ren, or you know, with BB-8, or you know, any of the new characters. They are there. They're their movies, you know, and we can enjoy them on a level, but they're made for them. Exactly. And don't you think, as people who've been in and around it for all these years to varying degrees, that when there are kids coming in that love these new characters and teenagers who catch on, you kind of want to encourage them. It's like, well, come through, because there's all this cool stuff. Absolutely. You know? They use them as a gateway drug, you know. It's, so it is that thing where, you know, mostly, you know, a lot of people, they say, "Oh, what's your favourite one?" They go, "Oh, I really like the Phantom Menace," or "I really like Attack of the Clones," whatever. Yeah. And a lot of them say, "But I know the originals are better." But it was the ones they saw when the first ones they saw were the ones that really inspired them and brought them into it. You know, so that's good. That's good. As a fan, speaking purely as a fan, what would you say is your fondest moment of being a Star Wars fan, outside of your working relationship with it? I met Darth Vader in a toy shop in about 1980, maybe. Yeah. And that was fun. I mean, I knew it wasn't Darth Vader. He was signing things Darth, so I knew it wasn't him. That was pretty cool. Going to that Return of the Jedi triple bill with my dad and my friend was a pretty big deal as well. Yeah, I think probably that actually. That was I think with the Odeon Leicester Square and one of those Leicester Square theatres, and that was a big deal to see that. And I remember going to see The Empire Strikes Back as well. There's those kind of. There's this weird thing. I do remember the noise that R2D2 makes on Dagobah. This is a really strange thing to say, but the sound of that sort of in a cinema will always make me feel like I'm 10 years old. It's really strange.
Yeah. It's funny the connections we make, though, isn't it, with certain elements of Star Wars? Yeah.
I remember taking my nephew to see, I think it was The Empire Strikes Back when they re-released it.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at what they'd done to it, what they changed in it. And I think The Empire Strikes Back, for me, was the best realised special edition.
Yes.
And he was just blown away. He'd seen them before, but he'd seen them on video.
Yeah.
So to sort of watch that on a big screen was it was very much like, because I was too young to see Blade Runner when it first came out.
Right, yeah.
And so
I just read the Marvel annual. That's all I used to keep reading. The Marvel annual.
Yeah. I tried to get through the book as a kid, couldn't get through the book as a kid. But I remember going with my dad to see the director's cut when that came out, the first time they put that out, and seeing it in a big screen, and just blew me away. And I think it's always interesting to go back and look at something like Raiders or Back to the Future in a cinema, or Jurassic Park, of course, which is, I saw that when that first came out in New York in Times Square.
That's funny. I was in Florida, saw it in Florida when it came out.
Crazy big. I still think that there's no better place to see films than in the cinema.
What is it, do you think, about, there's an era of filmmaking, probably you could argue it starts with Jaws in 75, the blockbuster era, and really kind of runs through the 80s. What is it about those films, those IPs, if you want to put it in that sense, that has just prospered and kept going for all these years afterwards?
I'm really not an expert. You ask Mark Kermode, but I think it was really cutting edge, but it was also familiar, because cinema up until that point had been very, very dour in a lot of ways. And then when Star Wars came out, America was coming out of Vietnam and all this kind of stuff, and it was just no one, because everyone says, the kids had never seen anything like that. No one had seen anything like that, and off that wave, there was this big sort of burst of great escapist cinema.
Yeah.
From Star Wars through Raiders, Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future, anything that Spielberg put out in that period, and so many really amazing things and I think it captured me. And so I'm 50, so now I'm the generation that's got kids who've now got kids.
Yeah.
So those kids were raised on, watch this with Daddy, whether you like it or not. I'm going to terrify you watching Gremlins. And I think that's because those films, they've really held us. And they didn't have that kind of movie. My dad didn't have anything like that growing up. So I think that's probably what's captured it. Why Ghostbusters is the thing that people will continue to make, better or worse. They'll just keep doing it. So that's probably it. And there was just so much good stuff. Some of it I've gone back and looked at recently that hasn't maybe dated as fondly as we remember it. It's not done quite as well as something you thought was great turns out to not be so good. Yeah. But equally, Back to the Future, Raiders, they're just
all-time classics,
practically flawless movies. I sat down and watched Raiders of the Lost Ark with Lynn Robertson Bruce, who's the puppeteer for Dio, and she'd never seen it. And we were on a job, and she'd never watched it. And I sat down with her and watched this, and I'd forgotten how good Raiders was. Because it was like watching it for the first time with someone who didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. And there's about 22 minutes in Raiders where it just doesn't stop for breath.
Yeah.
And it's just brilliant, just brilliant.
Like you say, flawless movie, really is. And that soundtrack is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier the challenge coins that you'd done for some of the crew on the last film. Crew stuff. Talk about that briefly. There must be some fascinatingly interesting. You're wearing a very cool T-shirt, by the way.
Oh yes, that's it. This is the just Trixie was the working title, the kind of the Blue Harvest for episode 9, if you will. And people say, "Why is it called Trixie?" And I'll just do this.
Yeah.
There was lots of all the different departments get things, and there's some fun. We always get a jacket at the end of the thing. There were these very nice puffer jackets with just a little number on them in yellow. And there was an evening, I think when we were shooting Rise of Skywalker, that myself, Derek Arnold, and Dave Chapman had gone out for dinner, and Derek had his first one on, Dave had his second one, and I had my new one on, and we just took a photograph of the 7, 8, and 9 on the arms. It means you've been working together for too long. But they do give some good stuff away, and also different places get different things. So you see things that, like the grown-ups get some beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
But we do patches and T-shirts and that kind of thing, and jackets, and you see them floating around on other film sets.
Yes.
Where, you worked on that. That's nice. Yeah. So
is that a common thing? That's a good thought. Is that a common thing? If you're working on other projects and you see hang on, that's a,
Yeah, you can tell where people have been. It's like you suddenly realise you've got half the cast, half the crew of Game of Thrones kicking around in your special effects department because they've all got Game of Thrones 6 jackets on or whatever. Yeah, they're the little badges of honour. They're quite fun.
We got another question. This is from John Golembisk, or Golembisk. I hope I'm saying that right. One of my daughter's favourite moments in the new trilogy is when BB-8 flips his flame torch out at Finn in The Force Awakens.
Uh-huh.
Was BB-8's attitude always in the script, or was that something you were able to bring out as it developed? So was that always there?
He was in the script, yeah. I mean, he was so beautifully written to start with, and then we got these wonderful puppets that were made by Matt and Josh and Giles and the whole fabricator creature department. And Dave and I just got 2 weeks to go away and find his personality. Although his personality was written down, we had to go away and look at what it could do, what it couldn't do, what it did, what certain versions of it did well. And we had 7 different versions for the first movie, and they were performed by myself, Dave and Matt Denton. So we all kind of worked together doing different bits and pieces, and we would use whichever tool was the right one for the box. From the box, whichever was the right one for the job. We were told it would never have to go downstairs, and we were glad because his body was too big to go downstairs, normal stairs. And then we get on the set and they say, "Can you bring him down these stairs?" So we had to really quickly work out how he did that. Luckily, they were big stairs, so it was always in the script. I mean, this was in there. So when we shot that, we were using the rod puppet version of it. So I'm behind that by about 4.5 feet through the whole scene, and they just removed me from it. And we had to make sure that the panel was in the right place, because then ILM would come in and they would replace that panel digitally and then do the thumbs up. That's not practical, that's a digital thing. But other things that came out of BB-8 on other in various parts of different movies, some of them were practical, others were partly practical with extra bits added on, or like when BB-8 wakes up Dio. I had to hit a very specific position with that. And then, of course, to reset, you have to walk back out the way you came, because that ball will change the way it rolls.
Right.
So you have to. I had to make sure I was in exactly the right place, and had to, because you do see him in the film just position himself a little bit more, so that when they add the thing on, he'd be in the right place for the attachment to come out and plug into Dio. Yeah. So it's quite specific in that, very technical when you're working like that, because you have to be able to marry up what you're doing physically with what ILM are going to come in and do digitally later.
We mentioned earlier about toys and how old toys were just the physical figure and there wasn't any extra stuff. And there was a kind of a beauty about the limitations of what the shark could do in Jaws, or what he could do on set. That kind of made, or not showing much of the alien gave it more menace. The limitations actually become benefits. Was there a limitation in terms of what BB-8 could do that, well, obviously ILM could pretty much work around anything, but what were the limitations for you on set?
Well, we weren't limited because of the marriage between digital and practical. We're not really limited to anything anymore, because in the old days you couldn't have achieved BB-8 at all, because you couldn't have done it practically, and you couldn't have removed me from every shot where he's puppeteered using a rod puppet, or with the trike version, so you couldn't have been able to remove the wheels. So now, because whatever you can think of, you can do. You just have to find a way of doing it convincingly.
Right.
If you go back and look at some early digital work where the digital work has got no weight to it. What we're lucky with BB-8 is we'll always do a reference pass for ILM, so we'll always, at least, even if we know we're not going to use the practical BB-8 in the scene, because maybe there's an explosion behind it and they can't get rid of me, or for various other reasons it's got to roll around the wall or whatever it's going to do, we'll always put a version of BB-8, a practical version of BB-8 through that set, so that they can see how it rolls, what happens when it hits a bump or whatever, and they then work out where all the reflections are. They can see what the lights in the Falcon look like when they reflect off the actual one. And then they'll film that and they'll give that as reference to the digital artists. Same with the Porgs. We would do practical shots. We would do reference shots for all the Porg stuff. There would always be something put in there, and then they would either marry that up. They'll do digital takeovers, or sometimes they'll enhance the puppets to bring them up to the standard, or not bring them up to the versatility you can have with a digital character. Yeah. So there'll be little marriages, but they'll always work from an original. They'll always work from a practical standpoint because it just makes everything look more believable.
So the marriage, that's a really good word, isn't it? You know, they did feel there was a period in visual effects history where it felt like stuntmen would never be needed. Yeah. You know, puppetry was a dying game, and that CGI would completely take over. And now it's properly.
Yes, audiences can tell. You sort of use this as a quote. I think there were more practical dinosaurs in Jurassic World 2 than there were in the previous 2 movies combined. And you can tell. You know, you could just when someone puts their hand on something, you can just tell if they're touching anything or not. Yeah. And I was talking very recently about the Fathia puppets that we had for The Last Jedi. Yeah. And I was on the head for those, and Dave and Chris Clark were doing the face, and that thing was full size when it had its head out of the stable stall. We made sure Kelly never quite knew what it was going to do next, just because, like, sometimes when you go to stroke an animal, it'll move, and you just take your hand back. So we would always kind of keep a little bit of spontaneity in that, just so she was never 100% comfortable with it. Yeah, and you get her reactions. I mean, she was just fantastic anyway. Yeah. Her reactions you see when she laughs at those and goes to stroke them, it's genuine. She really, really loved it.
Hello, I'm Warwick Davis, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
The improvements, then, it strikes me, is more performance-related and interactive than just the technology.
Yes, I mean, the technology's obviously got much, much better, and you've got very, very smart guys cramming a whole bunch of tech. Yeah. If you look at something like Argus 6 Eyes that was in Solo, the thing sitting next to Han playing Sabak, there was a practical puppet. I mean, Derek Arnold was in there. Matt and Richard Coombs able to perform all of the eyes, some of them individually. And Matt designed this system where you move its head and the eyes would kind of there was some kind of gyroscope. I don't understand any of it. He's really smart. But it was people actually thought they were doing live CG on set from the monitors. And people are like, no, it's round the corner. Go and look. And people just couldn't believe what they were seeing. And so you've got Gustav's team, the animatronics guys, they're really cramming a lot of stuff in there. And the servos are much smaller. And then you couple that with the software, you know, the Matt with the programming and that kind of stuff, that really gives you a versatility. And then equally, if you suddenly want to have somebody with their human head from the top of a creature and the creature's going out that way, then you know that ILM can just put them in a green suit, they'll just get rid of it. So that really gives you a scope to start playing around with things that aren't just guys in rubber suits. But then equally, guys in rubber suits are still really, really effective, especially if you can hide 2 people in one costume, or, you know, it's just people can't quite work out how you've done it, and that's fun.
I spoke to Neil Scanlon recently at length about this kind of stuff, and one of the questions was, and I'll ask you the same question, was now that the technology has progressed in small and large steps to the point where you get to the Rise of Skywalker, you can do things that you probably might not have been able to do to the same degree on Force Awakens. Does that excite you for future projects, whatever they may be, you know, future projects, using this technology and adapting it and moving it forward?
It does. Equally, because I don't necessarily understand the technology, my thing for me is, how does it perform?
Yes.
So I don't know what the interfaces are. It's that thing. Does it emote? Does it tell a story? Do you think it's real? Yeah. So you can have, the 2 ends of the spectrum, really, I suppose, on the Rise of Skywalker would have been the Maz Kanata, the amazing Maz Kanata puppet, where you had, Matt and Richard again and Claire Roy Harvey in a telemetry suit or some kind of, and she was performing Maz from across the way. So when she moved, it moved, and the guys were doing the face and the dialogue. And then you get to Babu Frick. He has got a lot of mechanics in his head. Yeah. But equally, you've got 5 guys and girls crammed behind Babu Frick, wearing green suits, just performing a little Bonraku puppet. Yeah. And it's tiny, and they've all just focused in on this one little thing. And again, it is hugely effective. Or you look at the Aki Aki babies, just glove puppets, and they're very, very sweet. And it's obvious what they are, but it works. They're just giving it Muppets, and they're all just sitting there having a great time. So you can take all that technology and make it work. And equally, you can have another lovely performance from just a straightforward glove puppet like Salacious Crumb. Yeah. Because Salacious Crumb will still be, if you take Salacious Crumb and put him in something now, that would still be a great puppet, and you would still believe Salacious Crumb.
I saw a video of you, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was at Dragon Con, when you did a bit of a puppetry thing you were doing?
Oh, yeah, they did public karaoke. So, yeah, we just rocked up.
Does that still, even with all the tech that you've got to hand in these kind of projects, does it still would you put a sock on your hand?
Yeah, it's great. We just did a thing because of the lockdown. I called a bunch of the puppeteers up and just said, should we just make a video? And so we put that out last week, a thing called Lockdown Puppets. Yeah. And it's kicking around on Twitter and stuff like that. And that was just a bunch of guys, a lot of whom had worked on Star Wars, just sat at home, and some of them have got puppets. So we just sent the track round and we got them all to do it, and we edited it, and it's a fun little thing. It's all together now by the Beatles. Yes. And we just like that kind of stuff. And there's some old marionette work in there, and there's some origami puppets and that kind of thing. But yeah, I still like all that kind of thing. You know, it's you get to sort of work those muscles as well if you go and work with the Muppets or whatever.
Do you think kids still, I mean, with TV shows now, there's CG TV shows like the Clone Wars, and there's all sorts of stuff, but kids of a certain age, and even kids more sophisticated, if you like, still seem to get a kick out of puppetry. Yeah. Why is there that connection? Because it connected to us with the Muppets.
Well, they're real. I mean, the thing is, you can see that they actually exist.
Yeah.
Simon Pegg tells a story about Yoda, and he'd started watching those movies with his daughter, and they'd watched the prequels, and then they got to The Empire Strikes Back, and his little girl turned around to him and said, "Oh, he's real." And they can tell the difference. Yeah. So if you go back, especially with for me, one of the greatest moments in cinema is a frog on a log playing the banjo at the beginning of the Muppet movie. It's just beautiful. Yeah. And it's just such a simple little, it's not simple at all, you know. No. Into that, but it's just a very, very simple moment. And the stuff that Jim Henson and the people who've subsequently taken that character over have been able to achieve with a sock with eyes on.
Yes.
That I think that's the thing with the Muppets, was those performers, Dave Goelz and Frank Oz and Jerry Nelson and all of those guys. They were the heart and soul of those creations. And there was so much of them in those characters because it's performers. It's performers performing.
Is there a project or is there a character, let's say outside of BB-8, wherever it may be from? It might be Gizmo from Gremlins or something. Is there a character we've seen before that you would love to be able to bring back with a modern technology just to give that extra level?
I don't know. I think maybe the Gremlins. I mean, they keep talking about doing that.
They do, yeah.
But then equally, the charm of Gremlins is that they were fairly low tech.
Yeah.
So maybe we could do some fun stuff with them, with guys in green suits that they would remove later. So you could probably have a lot of fun doing a Gremlins project. That would be quite a hoot, actually. Yeah, probably Gremlins, yeah.
So as we come to the end of this chat, lockdown's still going on. We've still got a few weeks left of it, at least. What are you going to be filling your days with?
I'm very lucky. I've picked up a bit of voice work, so I'm recording from home. So that's quite nice. I am currently ploughing my way again through Horizon Zero Dawn on the PlayStation.
Excellent.
I'm doing a little bit of writing and been watching The Mandalorian and the Clone Wars and all that sort of stuff. So
you dig all that stuff? You enjoying all that?
Yeah, I have liked it a lot. Yeah, so I've finished The Mandalorian now, and the Clone Wars series I think has been so good. I thought they've brought it to a really good conclusion. I think is it the last one next week?
Monday, May the 4th.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing that out, and that's I think that's going really, really well.
Yeah,
but a bit of TV, just a bit of cooking. Yeah.
Too much cooking.
Too much cooking, yeah. Too much pasta, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for giving us some time today.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks ever so much. And stay safe, everybody. Thanks a lot.
If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the Fanthatracks app through the App Store and follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com, and you'll notice in that episode we did have some listeners' questions sent in to Farthest From 22 Live, and if and when the event happens again online, this is where you'll be sending your questions. So as soon as we announce any future guests, get your thinking caps on and send those questions in. And on the regular show as well, we always love listeners' questions, so please send them through. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fanthatracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one please, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. Thank you as always for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Coming up next on Fanthatracks Radio, it's the Fantha from Down Under.